Hey, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with some more adventures in locksmithing. This time we are going to talk about um, a recent job I did for my next door neighbor, who I didn't know was a retired locksmith. Um, so, why didn't I know that? Well, let's just say me and this neighbor have not always seen eye to eye. We actually have a decent relationship, but when I moved in, he was at war with the previous owner of the house. He was trying to have the septic system condemned, saying it was polluting his pond. Um, he One of the first things he told me was the fence line is 2 feet on his property, and if I try to put a post in the ground or a plant or anything within 2 feet of the fence, that he'll go against me on it. And sure enough, we tried to put up like hot tape for the horses, so that they would respect the fence. And he came up in the middle of the night, cut it all up in little bits. So just to say that our initial relationship was estranged is putting it mildly. However, my mother-in-law, she broke the ice with him. She confronted him big, Italian woman way, and he kind of carried him back down. But he's always been concerned about security. Patrols his property on a quad with a gun, and but he's an older gentleman, and his son that was caring for him died, and then he ended up going into a facility because he injured himself and he had to go through rehabilitation. And unbeknownst to me, a whole bunch of drama had been going on with the family. And I won't go into that because that is their personal stuff. But needless to say, there's extended family who are now breaking in and robbing the place. And they had taken his keys as well as wallets and other stuff and that. So they have his keys. They're getting in. So I get a call up from his other son, who I've never met, and he says, "Hey, my dad always respected you." And I'm like, "Wow, this is news to me." And he says, and he said, "You're a locksmith." And I go, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I'm so mad. He's been having me try to rekey the place, and he's taught me some stuff, and I know some stuff, but I'm just having a horrible time of it." And when I found out the next door neighbor was a locksmith, I was so mad that he didn't tell me that sooner. We need to get you out there. And I'm like, okay. Set up an appointment. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to be coming from the Bay Area. I'm going to go up, pick up my dad, and we're all going to be there." And I'm like, okay. And I'm just excited because, like, he's got, you know, he's got some, 10-foot high fences with razor wire, and he just was very much, "Don't ever step foot on my property. I've been told if I go onto his property, he will shoot me," type attitude. I knew other people, sheriffs, who told me that he has has taken pot shots. He's just very protective, and so and not having to get to meet him personally, like, I inflated some of these opinions or views of just how hard he is, just because I had very little dealing with him, mostly negative, and everybody I talked to in the community had a similar experience. So I'm just like, I'm gonna get to see what his house looks like. I'm gonna see, like, this is kind of blowing me. It's hitting so close to home for me, but also finding out that he was a locksmith was like mind blowing to me. I mean, before I became a locksmith, I spent my teen years in a house with a locksmith, lived next door. Never talked to him about his business or any of that. Moved away, and within a year became a locksmith myself. Um, and then to find out that the house I bought is next door to a locksmith, a retired locksmith, and never knew that. I just, weird for me that it's such a niche profession that I have lived next door to two other locksmiths in my life by random chance. Just kind of blows my mind. It's like, how many plumbers live throughout their lives have lived in two different homes next to a plumber or an electrician, and like, how much more of a common profession is that than locksmithing? So just kind of blows my mind there. But anyways, they call me up the day before I'm going. They go, my dad says, you need to have L-blinks. So I call him back. What do you mean L-blinks? You need to have Schlage L-blinks, master keys. What? I'm thinking, there's no way he has it. Every lock is Schlage commercial grade, and we've got locks that are H key, K key, E key, a few C, but some J key, all over the gambit. So that means that they've got, rough patterns. You're trying to pick inside those tight things. We're just having a horrible time. And he's fence post pinned them, and he's got spool pins in every chamber, and he's just done every trick in the book to, make these impossible to pick. And so the old way that Schlage used to do master keying was to have it physical master key levels. So the locks would be pinned up the same, but you'd have, your L key was like at the top, and then you had like, your J, K, and H, and then you had your like A, B, C, and each like two here went up to this one, or these two here went up to that one, these two here went up to that one, and at the top was L. And so it was kind of like the L key would go into everything, but as you went down, like they would work. Each of those keys would work fewer and fewer locks until it got down to like your normal C and E, which were your standard residential and kind of one step up above commercial. But I'd never seen anybody have something with an L lock, but he was using an L key because that. Now the thing is, the L key blank is so thin that it's usually done out of steel, which is not the standard material that keys are made out of. They're standardly made out of brass, sometimes tin, but mostly brass, because they need to be non-magnetic and they need to be soft because the lock has to be non-magnetic materials. So you want two soft materials to work against each other. But because these are so thin, they're not recommended to be cut in the field. They're supposed to be factory cut a lot of times, and they're, easily messed up by the machine, and they're so thin that a lot of times they're manufactured in steel so that they don't bend due to their thinness. But he was using them because he just had all these different keyways. It was a pain in the butt. What was funny was seeing a pump house that was had these locks on it, and it was like I could go remove the siding of it. It's a wooden pump house. His main house is like an old trailer that's been modified into more of a permanent house, and it's like old motorhome trailer type doors and stuff like that, and it's got these advanced locks. And I was like, I could kick this door in, I could pry this door open, I could break through these windows. There's so many ways I could break into this house. And that's what we ended up doing. I helped the son get up on a ladder, and he went through the window into the kitchen sink and came in and unlocked the door because that was just easier. But I took the locks apart from the back because they're like commercial. You can do that, and you can use a little pin to undo the tail piece on the back, and then you can depress and open the lock. And they thought that was impossible. His dad was like, you can't get it apart without having picked it. But I did, because I couldn't get it picked, because he'd made it so difficult. And he wouldn't let his son have been trying to pick. He put a leashy tool, an L-blade leashy tool. I didn't even realize they made that, and was trying to pick it, and it wasn't working. Well, it's because his dad did everything possible to make this difficult to do. And it was just funny, security screen doors on some of them, all this stuff, all this. Now, they did the whole gate up with multiple chains around it, different types of chains, different types of big heavy-duty padlocks, did all that. They came back out, and they kicked in doors and all that stuff to get past it, now that their keys didn't work. But how did they get in the gate? They cut the hinges off, because that was easier than all the stuff they put on it. And that's what I get. Like, he takes a very different approach than I do. as a locksmith, I know just how, when it comes to locks, like, I know that the door is your weakest part, but the moment you start going crazy with your locks, then every other part of your house is more vulnerable, and they're going to break in a window, or they're going to physically break in the door, or cut through a wall, or whatever. There's more than one way into a house than just the door. So at a certain point, I look at locks as a necessary. It keeps the honest people out. It does the minimum. It covers you if you have to do an insurance claim, and it makes it so people have to make noise to break in. So if you're home, you're aware it's happening. But the best piece of security I have is my front gate and big dogs. But I'm in the security business, so I have that. I know, like, definitely certain hardware is better than others, and I know it's important to put longer screws into your deadbolt. There's just certain things that I take, but I don't go insane when I could. Just because I have a better representation. I've seen a lot of houses broken into, and it's interesting the different school of thought, because my time period, most locks that people put on their houses, like, Kwikset is now the standard, and Kwikset is cheapo stuff. Cheapo. And so for my generation, when that's what 90% of houses have, that or lower, going crazy on locks just seems silly. But his generation as a locksmith was like, he got all, like, the industrial stuff, all the stuff that, like, hospitals and stuff use. And I just kind of found that very interesting, like, his different perspective. He's very, secure it, shut himself in, be prepared, defend it type attitude, which is what I kind of experienced in that. But seeing that came from being a locksmith and how he applied that to locksmithing, this is probably the hardest opening rekey I have ever done. Every single lock took me a ton of time and a lot of work to get through, even when I had the key, because this was so complicated. There was different key blanks, different things, all this stuff, going through, digging out, like, the L key blanks and getting all that stuff, because that is just something I've never run into. The towns that I service are not big enough for any of that to ever come into play. Like, that's like for big high-rise buildings and stuff in, like, older, like, closest to me would be like old Sacramento and stuff like that would use that. We don't use that here. That's big facilities, old facilities typically use that kind of stuff. It's just not called for. Like, not even the schools or the hospitals and stuff use the type of stuff that he had instituted on his house. And so that, to me, was just really impressive to see, and gave me a new appreciation for him, but also was like, for years he was kind of a jerk to me, and it's like, it's still, like, in some way, like, I still feel like I'm fighting against him. It's me, the young locksmith, trying to overcome all the stuff he did. But they were very impressed with me, because the fact that I was able to actually do it, because he really thought that, like, it was all impenetrable, that nobody could do it. So it's just kind of interesting to see this long-standing thing finally come to conclusion. And I gotta say, that is the story of, like, my hardest rekey ever. Was my next door neighbor, an old locksmith. Catch you in the next video.
Not bad for an old locksmith.